Good afternoon or good morning, as the case may be. Welcome to NTIA's Tribal Consultation session on the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. We're a few minutes after the hour. As you know, we had a few technical issues. Hopefully folks were able to see the comments come in to the chat box so that you were aware we were working through those. We've opened this session, I think you heard, in listen-only mode to cut down on background noise so that everybody who is participating, and it looks like we've got about 200 folks on the line, are able to hear the presentations. The primary purpose of this tribal consultation session is to hear from tribal leaders or their designee for input on the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. It is not an open meeting, and we would ask that any press who are on the line, please disconnect now. As a matter of logistics, once we move to the government-to-government dialogue, we'll ask you to use the raise your hand function in the GoToWebinar app, and I'll be watching and we'll unmute you so that you can ask your questions during that session. There will also be time for tribal leaders who are on audio only to be able to participate in the discussion. And when we do that, we will have to unmute all lines and individuals will need to press *6. The session is being recorded. If that's a problem for you, then you should drop off now as well. Lastly, NTIA is also accepting and very much encourages written comments. You can send those to broadbandusa@ntia.gov. That email address will be available on the PowerPoint slide. Please send them by February 11th. In addition, this PowerPoint slide is also available at the Broadband USA website and will also be available for you to download. So with that, I'd like to introduce NTIA's Associate Administrator for Broadband Programs, Douglas Kinkoff. Doug?
Thank you, Laura, and good day to everybody. It's my honor to welcome you to the Tribal Consultation on the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program that was set up in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. The Act provides new sources of tribal broadband funding that can assist in mitigating the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, which is exacerbating the digital divide across Indian country. Congress, recognizing that Indian country was hit hard with COVID-19, determined that a rapid response is needed. The tribal consultation will be with primary tribal leaders or their designee and tribal stakeholders. Tribal consultations are off the record and not for press purposes. Request that any press drop off at this time to ensure tribal leaders and stakeholders have the opportunity to participate. The Department of Commerce and the National Telecommunications Information Administration, NTIA, are dedicated to expanding broadband deployment in tribal lands and rural America and promoting digital inclusion. Broadband is vital to education, health, economic and workforce development, culture, public safety, and much more. We look forward to your comments on the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program and how we can work together to solve broadband access challenges in Indian country. We appreciate all the work the tribes and tribal associations have accomplished to expand broadband and create awareness of the detrimental effects of the digital divide. We recognize that each tribal government has its own challenges and priorities related to broadband infrastructure and look forward to your comments on how we can make this program meet these needs. We're committed to working with you to work on recovering resilience. We know that while these funds are a big step forward for tribal broadband, they are still insufficient to meet all broadband needs in Indian country. With that, now it's my privilege to introduce Council Member Joe Garcia, who will be providing the invocation today. Council Member Garcia was born and raised in Okewingay and continues to serve his community in traditional educational, tribal government, and economic development efforts. He has been actively involved in NCAI since 1995, serving two-year terms as the first vice president of NCAI. Prior to being elected president in November of 2005 and re-elected in 2007. He also completed his third term as governor of Okewingay after his term as governor. He was elected as chairman of the All Indian Pueblo Council, AIPC, the organization which was formed in 1598 and serves the 19 pueblos of New Mexico. He served as chairman for 4 years, 2007 to 2010. His most recent effort for Okewingay is a self-governance initiative whereby the tribe runs all its BIA programs under self-determination. In 2009, he became head councilman by tradition and will serve a lifetime in that capacity. He is a member of the Tribal Leaders Task Force, a co-chair of the Tribal Technical Advisory Committee for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and co-chair of the Tribal Transportation Self-Governance Program, NEGREG team. Councilman Garcia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction, and welcome everybody. It is my honor, and I am honored that I was asked to provide the invocation this morning for the first session out of 3 sessions on the consultation, so I will do so. Allow me, with all due respect. Umbiagandi, Rovie, Rovie, no Rimoy, Ambano Ikagima, but Anshaw Rimpori, Ambanet Winked to come for it, Abaweto in Periconi, Tam Periconi, Acum Periconi, Tam Periconi, Obama for Nato, Nuriconi, the one in Hoku Hardy Manity, Nori, Hamba have Kori Amiri, Nakuhani to Honamoe, Bakibona Chamoe, Ambanoe Ho, Nambiquani, Wingerimui, Nantabu Rinani, Kano, the Seapuri, Sakanapuri, and by Urana Henai, Ambarinya, Miri. Bonoa have winning one under into one under a kiku authority on the rankai pinta the pui and the no way who became on the door more mano toku awita or yo up a fine and the okay wing or more no we for young to away me rankui while thing waviani out in the view we will be answer more we hear no unku kandi no pinta have wing on and button and the wing on that boy or Rauhu Kiri. With all due respect, a brief translation is in order. I call upon the Spirit, the great Creator, the spirits of our ancestors, to be here with us today with this meeting, consultation session established by the organization, and we are grateful that this is happening. It's a long time coming with these kinds of efforts, but I call upon the Spirit to be here with us today so that we can be in tune with what we need for our people, for our tribal lands, for our tribal citizens, that this is a nation that consists of many other nations, all of the tribal nations in this country, and that this is a good effort. And we thank the creators of this organization and the creators of this session for moving forward with this. And we are looking forward to all of the input that will be provided by our tribal leaders and representatives. And so I call upon the Spirit to bring us that courage, to bring us the mindset, to bring us the spiritual values and the spiritual strength from our ancestors, because their spirit is still here. And I call upon the Creator to invoke the spirits of our ancestors, those that were knowledgeable, those that were heartfelt, and that we do this respectfully, that we do it together, and that we will be successful in our efforts. And I call upon also for healing of the healing need that we have due to the COVID, and that we will get over that. We will win that war as well, just as we won all the other wars that we've been in, and that we will remain strong and true to our people and to our land bases. On behalf of myself, Okewinge, I introduce myself as Sohua Owitang. That means Mark of the Misty Lake. That's who I am. And I open the meeting with respect, and that we'll also be respectful in this session. So please speak your mind, speak your heart, and we will be successful for this session and the upcoming session. Thank you very much. So the floor is back open, and I believe Doug is going to continue from here. So Doug, it's yours. Back to you.
Doug, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman Garcia, for both the moving invocation and the service to your tribe. At this time, I just want to highlight the agenda for today. We will be finishing up here the welcome invocation. Then I'm just going to do a very quick overview of the 3 programs given to NTIA through the Appropriations Act. Then the team will pick it up and provide a more deep dive into the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Grant Program. And then we will go through the government-to-government dialogue on the items set forth here. And then we will go over the logistics and responses opportunity for tribes, and then close out around 5 o'clock. So with that, let's go to the next slide, and I will give a quick overview on the 3 programs. So the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 gave NTIA 3 grant programs. The first being the discussion for today, which is the Tribal Connectivity Grants Program, which is to expand access and adoption, provide broadband service on tribal land, and provide for remote learning, telework, telehealth resources during the pandemic. That is funded at $1 billion. The second program is the Broadband Infrastructure Deployment Grant, and this is focused on providing grants for covered broadband projects defined as competitively and technologically neutral projects for the deployment of fixed broadband services in census blocks with at least one household or business that does not have access to 25 megabits download or 3 megabits upload. Congress allocated $300 million for this program. And the last program, but not least, is the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program, which will result in us providing grants to eligible recipients in anchor communities for the purchase of broadband internet access or any eligible equipment, or to hire or train information technology personnel. And we've been allocated $285 million for this program. And I just quickly touch on these as tribal governments and tribal colleges will be eligible for these programs in different ways. And I would just tell you to look for those as we move forward. But today we are to focus on the tribal connectivity grants. And I'm now going to turn it over to Jennifer Duane. Jennifer Duane is a broadband program specialist for NTIA. Ms. Duane joined NTIA in 2009 to develop policy for the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program, BTOP. She has served as a senior attorney advisor in the Office of Chief Counsel, providing legal advice and general counsel to the NTIA's offices on a variety of telecommunications issues, such as information technology, commercial data, and privacy matters. And most recently, she served as a senior advisor to the Assistant Secretary of NTIA on matters related to broadband and public safety. So Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Thanks, Doug. And I'm actually having a little bit of technical difficulties with our Citrix system, so I am not able to turn on my camera or see the slides. But just from memory, the purpose of these next 4 slides are to just give a general overview of the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. And if you could turn to slide 4, Gilbert. So the first elements that the Act defines are the eligible entities, and the Act specifies 5 eligible entities: tribal governments, tribal colleges and universities, Native Hawaiian and Native Alaskan tribal organizations, Native corporations. So this is going to be a key element of our discussion today. We're interested in getting feedback from the tribes on how, given these eligible entity definition, we could design a program that will that will really enable the tribes to achieve their broadband priorities through this program. Next slide, please. So slide 5 talks about the tribal land. The purpose of this grant program is to expand broadband access and adoption on tribal lands. The Act defines 5 components of tribal lands. I won't run through the 5 different components, but that will be a key topic of discussion later on in the government-to-government dialogue. Slide 6, please. So this slide gives the funding uses of the program. The Act enables or really defines some broad eligible uses for the program. The main components are broadband infrastructure deployment and also broadband adoption activities. So we see the Act as being very broad in scope as to the eligible uses for this program, and there also is a administrative expense limitation. Only 2% of the grant funds can be used for administrative expenses, and there is a limit, and then there is a priority for new broadband infrastructure to deploy it on unserved tribal lands, and that we'll get into that discussion too later on in the dialogue. Slide 7. With that, we just wanted to point out a couple of other considerations on this slide, that to point out that equitable allocation is a key element of the statute, and that's something that we really want to hear from the tribes on how we can best go about ensuring that this statutory requirement is met, and how we can go about ensuring that there is an equitable distribution of this funding. The other key areas I want to point out is that the Act establishes very aggressive timelines. NTIA has, limited time to establish the requirements for this program. Once we release our notice of funding opportunity, we have applicants have 90 days to submit an application. There's also within 6 months, tribes need to expend that money, and there is also a commitment deadline or expenditure deadline, and that is so those are all topics of discussion as well. So on slide 8 starts the government-to-government dialogue, and to lead that government-to-government dialogue, I'd like to turn this over to Adam Geisler. Adam is the National Tribal Government Liaison with the First Responder Network Authority, serving Western tribes in FEMA Regions 9 and 10. He is a member of the La Jolla Band of Luiseño Indians near San Diego, California, and has served in an elected leadership role with the tribe, running tribal government and shaping national policy in public health, transportation, economic development, and housing for over a decade. NTIA is very fortunate to have Adam working with us on this program and the expertise he brings to this. So, Adam, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Can everybody hear me okay? Or Jennifer, can you hear me okay? I know you're probably coming off of mute.
I can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, Miriam, machachi ikum, noam Adam Geisler, nolonoinai bayom guichum, shunlovik. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this process. It's an exciting day for Indian country, and it's an honor to be a part of the dialogue that we're going to have here in a government-to-government consultation format. I also just wanted to point out for those of you that may see me in a different capacity at times that I am here today providing support as a subject matter expert to NTIA as NTIA continues to implement all these exciting new grant programs, and in particular the one that we're going to be discussing today that has such broad-reaching and possible positive impacts for Indian country. As we go through the slides today, we have quite a few folks on the line, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I do want to remind everybody that that we do want to hear from tribal leaders first and foremost. This is meant to be a government-to-government discussion. Also, as we go through, we're going to go through each of these areas and then open up the bridge. We'll talk about how we're going to do that once we get done, but we'll go into the overview. But one thing I do want to point out is that the intent here is really to get your feedback. I've sat in a number of consultations in the past as an elected leader myself, and I know how it can feel at times when you're looking to try to get answers to programs that may already have the parameters defined. And I think what's exciting about this opportunity that we're looking at today is that today we really are trying to get the feedback directly from you on how to make this a program that is going to be beneficial and equitable for Indian country. And so please, as you think about the responses as we go through each of these topic areas, please think about how, if you had the ability to write the NOFO or write the parameters on how we would deploy this in a way that's going to help and bring a level of equity to Indian country, think about it in that context, because the cake is not baked yet. And it's important that you share the critical ingredients that you see as part of this process. I also want to, before we jump into this, recognize that that the legislation that we're talking about is tied to the response elements related to COVID-19, and I do want to recognize the impacts to Indian country that we have seen today, and recognize the tenacity that Indian country has brought to addressing the pandemic and the needs of your people, of our people. And thank you, Councilman Garcia, for those words and keeping everybody centered and grounded as we think through the solutions that we need to bring today to make this a good program. Additionally, one of the biggest goals that I think we have, in addition to listening to the things that you want and need in order to make this successful, is also keeping in mind that we also want to make sure that we have, through this process, the ability to understand the larger need. $1 billion is a great start, and for those of you that have been working in this space, we all recognize that $1 billion is a starting point and not the total need that there is in order to address the digital divide across Indian country today. Also, please keep in mind that we are working within the parameters of the statute and of the law, or of the legislation, and that there are some components of this that are time driven based upon the language. And so we appreciate your patience as we are quickly pulling together these consultations and trying to meet the timelines that are set forth to get the NOFO out, so we can start getting these dollars into Indian country and address the needs that you have already going on today with telehealth, education, community, economic development, and digital inclusion, just to name a few items. So we will today cover program eligibility as a topic, equitable distribution. We definitely want to hear your feedback around the National Historic Preservation Act, NHPA, and NEPA, and make sure that we're being competent about the cultural resource elements that are involved in this type of a conversation. This exciting conversation, as well as we also are going to get into the unserved areas and what that means, and how we are going to look to prioritize these dollars in these different buckets. And then lastly, we'll dive into the reporting elements that I'm just going to say it right now. We realize that COVID has created a strain on a lot of the tribal economies, and that also means on the staff. And the intent here is to really think through a good reporting process that makes life easy for you, but also meets the needs of the reporting elements that we need to keep in mind at the government. And then we'll wrap this with opening up the bridge. So we're going to go through each of these topics, and we'll wrap this by opening up the bridge and hearing from the tribal leaders on the line today about what you see as the solutions for these, what you see as the answers for these topics. And so again, we'll go through all of these, and then we'll address that as we get to the back. So if we could, Gilbert, if we could please move to the next slide. And we'll jump into, I think, one of the areas that that I know is a point of interest for all of you, given frankly other legislation that's been out there and the responses that we've seen. So we do need to make sure, as a topic in terms of context of this program, that we address program eligibility as it relates to the who and the what. And you'll see the language copied and pasted right there from the statute. And clearly there's a lot of flexibility within the who's eligible. But I think that the bigger component that we really want to pick everybody's brain about and understand your perspective is how should we look, or how should NTIA look at the implementation of a program when we start looking at eligibility, and how can we ensure that the needs of the tribe are being met through the application process. And as part of that discussion, I would encourage you to think about, should each tribal government be limited to one application or one application per entity? And I think the driver behind that is we realize that a number of you are part of consortiums in one form or another, and that when you're a part of a consortium, oftentimes you join those consortiums via resolution, and that consortium plays a role on behalf of your government. It falls underneath the umbrella and can be an extension of your tribe's government. But we also want to be cognizant that we recognize the potential for a tribe to apply for this individually as well as through a consortium. And so the question is, what happens when we receive applications coming from tribes where they are supporting the application process both individually and through a consortium, and how do we prioritize that? Should we only accept one application based upon the tribal submission and where you put that? So again, food for thought, how would you like us to process that? Also, we also are looking at what types of projects should be eligible. We know a lot of you are looking at how you can collaboratively approach this, which is an exciting thing to see. We also know that some of you are looking at doing this individually, and collaboration based on your environment or where you're at just really isn't in the cards for the solutions that you're looking for. So how do we prioritize? Those? And then lastly, how should we look at and how should NTIA address the use of the federal funds in that same manner? And I think this all really comes back to, we realize that there's plenty of eligibility here, but the tough part that we're all looking at is how do we prioritize this based upon what you see as the needs in the priority areas that are going to have the best solutions for Indian country. As an aside, you'll also note that when you're reading through the statute, you may notice in the definitions that tribal organizations was not fully defined, and that I think is in part due to the fact that it's been previously defined in 25 U.S. Code. So for those of you that may have had that question, we did want to just make sure that we highlighted that as part of this discussion. So again, as we move towards the back and we start to open up, I'm hoping that you can address and bring your comments in a way that addresses it by topic area. It's not a requirement, but we would ask that you do your best to try to fit your responses within these topic areas to help inform us on some of these items. We also realize that there's going to be more here that we may not have covered, and we also do want to hear that. Next slide. So now this brings us to a place that I think is another element that we're really wanting to hear from you about, the equitable distribution discussion. The Act directs NTIA to provide funds on an equitable basis to tribes. And NTIA is seeking input for how we look at what equitable means. Indian country is in so many different places right now when you look at the broadband needs, whether you're talking about all of the folks that we have up in Alaska or down, you know, literally in the opposite corner of the United States, and even out to Hawaii. Your needs are different. And so how can we create an application process and frankly, a program that brings people along collectively in a way that empowers everybody to have an opportunity for success with this program? How can NTIA ensure equitable distributions of the funds? And we do have some ideas here on the slide for you to ponder. We've all lived through formula distributions. And is that a methodology that you think is something that we should be exploring here? Is there an alternative to a formula distribution, possibly an upfront allocation? Is there a component of that maybe should be competitive in this application, or needs-based, competitive, we'll say competitive/needs-based? Or do you see an application process that addresses equitability that has a combination of these items, potentially an upfront allocation of some kind, plus a competitive or needs-based element of the application? So is there a way that we can meet the equitable distribution component by leveraging a couple different ways to distribute the dollars that Indian country truly needs today? And then with that, I hope that everybody here is thinking about, and this is what we really do want to understand, is what is a good way that you see that we can be looking at to measure need? Should every tribe receive a standard allocation for planning, for example, or other eligible expenses? And if those tribes already have planning or eligible expenses covered, should we look at using the balance in a more competitive or needs-based platform for implementing the plan? So again, tough discussion when we look at equitability, and we want to hear from you. So please, if you can, share with us what you think the right answer is if you were to write the NOFO, because that's what we're here to do today, is get that feedback. Next slide, please. So this is another important area that we know we want to hear from you. We know it's relevant and it is important. These projects are that we know everybody is looking at are going to have an environmental component to that. And so obviously we have to be looking at all the federal elements associated with that, the National Historic Preservation Act, NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, and how we're looking at cultural resources and making sure that we're keeping the protection of those resources in mind and meeting the cultural elements of the tribe. So for discussion, when we're talking about this topic area, do you have suggestions for expediting the environmental process? And for those of you that probably read this and take pause, I do want to just point out that the intent here, there's a lot of other things that have gone on in previous programs. I know that there was a lot of frustration that came out of the small cell waivers that happened in the past, and that is not what we are getting at when we ask this question. Again, the legislation is founded in a place to address the need as a result of the impacts of COVID. And so when we talk about these networks that everybody is wanting to get stood up and these exciting solutions that Indian country wants to bring into their communities, how do we do that in a way that is expediting it based upon your need? So I want to make that really clear. This isn't to try to find a way to circumvent. It's really coming from a place of, we realize that COVID is here, the needs are here, the children need access, your governments need access, your health facilities obviously need access. And so what's a way that we can look at getting speed to deployment to those that need it in a culturally competent way? Do you also have the resources today to address the requirements of NEPA when we start talking about TIPOs and SHPOs? Because we realize that a number of you have been impacted by COVID. My tribe itself has been impacted by COVID, and we are seeing and we know that there are 60–70% hits to your economy. And so do you see a need for some of these dollars to go towards environmental and planning components around the needs and the deployment of the networks? What should NTIA be aware of with regards to historic preservation and how we might be able to improve the process? And I'm going to say that again, what are things that we can do to improve and empower Indian country and the cultural resource protections and the environmental protections that you think are relevant in this discussion? And then what should we be aware of when it comes down to the cultural pieces that may be your biggest concerns? We realize that when we start talking about these topics, broadband, infrastructure, we also realize that there's a traditionalist or a cultural component to this that we want to be cognizant of. And so we wanted to just ask that question with these new technologies being deployed every day. What are the biggest environmental or cultural resource concerns that you may have with this program that we need to be making sure that we're addressing? So there you go, topic area 3. Again, think about how you would like to respond to topic area 3. We really do want your input and guidance. Next slide, please. So this is another fun one. The unserved area topic. So the Act stipulates the grant funds be prioritized to unserved areas and households. A household is considered unserved if it lacks access to qualifying broadband service. Further, the Act states that the Assistant Secretary shall award a grant to each eligible entity that submits an application, that the Assistant Secretary approves for consultation with the Commission to prevent duplication of funding. And this kind of, I think, is another really critical component to this discussion, that we want to understand how NTIA can ensure that the grant funds are prioritized to the unserved areas on tribal lands. If you look to the bottom right corner of the slide, when we talk about what it means in terms of unserved, the definition, at least at this point within the statute, is 25 megabits of download speed is the baseline. So you need to be able to at least be having 25 download speed. We're also talking about, it also delineates an element here of upload speeds of not less than 3 megabits per second. And then the third element of this, and this is another space that we would like to kind of hear a little bit more from you, especially those of you that are using wireless type solutions, maybe you're not tied into fiber, maybe you're using a satellite service or a microwave type service. And in terms of latency, what is sufficient in order to support real-time applications? For some of you out there that are everything I just said with the 25 download speed and the 3 megabit upload speeds, and if that sounds just, if I'm speaking a foreign language to you right now, think about it in this context. If you can't sit down and stream on your laptop today, or you're not able to have those services that allow for streaming and high data usage, then there's a strong likelihood that you are not falling within, that you are or would be considered an unserved area. So to continue and expand upon that, what is one of the best ways to demonstrate if an area is unserved? Do you have a different take or a more expanded take on what you see as unserved in your community? Because that may differ or may expand upon what's already in statute, and we want to know how you see or how you define that. And again, what thresholds would constitute unserved. So again, this is topic area 4. Not another easy conversation. These are the tough ones we have to have. But I'm also excited that we are having it. So again, unserved areas, and how would you define that? What does unserved mean to you? And how should we look at developing those parameters to make sure that we have a level of equity with the program? Topic area 5, please. Reporting requirements. Okay, so understanding there is a need for transparency in the use of the federal funds, NTIA is seeking input on the reporting requirements that are not going to be overly burdensome. But we also want to make sure that we're allowing for the public to be informed about how the federal funds are being utilized. We also realize that a number of you are hoping to see some data that comes out of this the same way that we are in the reporting. And so how can we implement a reporting process that is respectful based upon where you're at as a tribe, the things that you're dealing with related to the pandemic, and making sure that this is not an overly burdensome function, but at the same time that we can still capture the information that we need. I'm also going to add one more component to that, which is I'm going to come back and say, how can we also use the reporting process to identify and really start to quantify that need of Indian country to solve the digital divide. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. So additional feedback. So now we are going to move into the part that where we want to hear from you about these topic areas directly. Please also don't feel like you are confined to these topic areas. They are meant to be a guidepost for this conversation, and we recognize that there may be items beyond this that you want to share, and please do. I am going to ask that one more time that as you provide your comments today, that for those of you that are not speaking on behalf of your tribe or your tribal government or do not have that authority to do so, we are going to ask that that you reserve the floor and the time for the tribal leaders to provide their comments. For those of you that are going to be providing comment today, we are establishing a record as part of this process to inform the NOFO, and we do ask that you say your name, your title, and who you're representing. And in the event that you have been given the authorization from the tribe that you are representing, can you also make clear that you have the authority to be speaking on their behalf? Because again, we are engaging in a government-to-government dialogue here, and it's important that we uphold that relationship between the United States government and those that fall within the trust responsibility of the United States government. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Gilbert. All right, so I'm going to leave the topic areas up. I also want to point out that in the chat box, you will see a link to the slides that we went over today in case you're obviously you're not able to control the slide deck here. So if you're wondering what, or if you want to go back to the slides, we do have a link in the chat to pull those up. And the way that we're going to work our way through this today is if you can start by raising your hand in the text box. And so we are going to start with those that are on the GoToMeeting platform that are using the application. And then once we make our way through those on the GoToMeeting process, we will then open up the phone bridge for those that are unable to use the application and are dialing in via phone. Again, tribal leaders, if you could try to keep your comments to between 3 to 5 minutes to be respectful of others that also want to share. 573 federally recognized tribes, and there's only so much time. I also want to remind you that if you are not comfortable or you are not prepared to share your comments today, that we have 2 more sessions coming up next Wednesday, the 10th, and Friday, the 12th, same time. And we would encourage you to come back to those. And also, if you wish to submit your responses in writing, we will have the email link to where you can submit your responses in writing at the end of the consultation. So with that, Laura, if we could we go ahead and start with any of our attendees that may have their hands up?
Yes, we've got 4 or 5 folks with their hands up. I'm going to try to get them in order, and we'll unmute them as we go. So I'm starting with Aaron Payment. I have unmuted your line if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment.
Can you hear me now?
Aaron, is your line?
Yes,
Yes,
Aaron?
we can hear you.
Welcome.
Okay. Hello, Annie Boujou. I'm the chairperson for the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians, Dr. Aaron Payment. So I'll limit my comments today to equitable distribution and formula, and I'll be joining some of the other calls. But so, you know, we just went through the CARES Act and there was some consultation, and so, you know, we just went through this, so it's kind of fresh. And a lot of tribes were concerned during that process. A lot of different ideas came out. The size of your tribe, how many employees, your land base, you know, a number of different criteria tribes had suggested. And we do understand the complexity because tribes are very diverse. My tribe is a land poor tribe because we were recognized late. And so we have less land than some very small tribes that are like 1/20th of our size, just because of when they were recognized. So relying just on one criteria is not an equitable solution. Also, while we had advocated, several tribes had advocated your tribal membership size should have something to do with it. I think that should play a big portion of the criteria. We ended up being told or foretold or voluntold that we would use the Indian Housing Block Grant statistic, which in my case, my tribe's case, that worked out well because we're progressive and we started trying to maximize that number over 25 years ago. But for other tribes that have not, it was a disadvantage for them in the CARES Act distribution. So, you know, there seems to be a continued paternalism from the federal government to not respect our sovereignty and our ability to give you our enrollment number. We have enrollment numbers that are pretty accurate. They're more accurate than anything the federal government has. You know, the politics of per capita and blood quantum and service delivery and all of that means that we have a very streamlined, minimized enrollment number to be a member of a tribe. And it's the most reliable number from a tribal perspective. So I'm thinking maybe 50% based on population. And this is just formulating. And then also 30% of a total amount that a tribe could qualify based on connectivity or the lack thereof. And obviously that would then factor in if tribes have a large reservation base, they have a large area that they need to cover for connectivity. And it also would factor in, or should factor in, tribes that have checkerboard reservations, that have reservation holdings. You know, my tribe has reservation holdings all across the Upper Peninsula. It's 3 hours from one tribal office to another, and our service delivery is to everybody, and so it shouldn't be limited that way. So maybe 50% for population, 30% for connectivity, and then another 20% through an RFPQ. And so that would allow a tribe to write 20% of it to be based on their unique needs and their tribe. And it could be, again, their tribal capacity, telemedicine, behavioral health, which is very important, especially during a pandemic, and not forgetting that we had another crisis, the crisis of the opiate, and then leave a tribe the ability to create the justification under that additional 20%. So this plan would be for 100%, and it would allow for maximum flexibility for a tribe of respecting our sovereignty to get a portion based on population, based on our identified need to fill that gap with broadband, and then on 20% based on an RFPQ. So that's it, all I want to say today. I probably took up my time, and if there's time later, I'll circle back with some additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. And just as a reminder to everybody, we are recording this, and there will be a transcript that comes out of this. So in case any of you are wondering how fast I can write with my pen, I want to assure you that we are going to be capturing all of this. But thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your comments on behalf of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe. Laura, who do we have next?
Yes, we have Francisco Simbana. I have your line unmuted now. Francisco? I'm not sure. Hopefully you can hear us. We can't quite hear you. We had you for a minute.
Maybe Francisco stepped away for a moment.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll put that on a side to come back. All right, let's keep going.
All right, I've got Henry KG. If you could state the tribe that you're representing today.
Oh, I think he's still on mute. And I believe you.
Apologies.
Self-mute.
Henry? Let's give him just a minute to be sure.
Okay.
We've got 2 or 3 more folks. Henry? All right, we'll try to come back to Henry KG as well. Okay, so that was just and next I've got Reggie Tippins. I've unmuted your line.
Good afternoon. My name is Reggie Tippins. I'm the tribal administrator for the Upper Mattaponi Indian Tribe in Virginia. My tribe, as well as 5 other tribes in Virginia, attained our federal acknowledgement through legislation that was passed in 2018. We currently have an application in the 2.5 gigahertz priority window, but in some communications with FCC, they are insinuating that we don't have tribal lands because none of us have trust land at this point. Although in our bill, it does specify that we can take land in the trust, and it identifies areas which we can take land in the trust, and it also says that we have all the rights of a federally recognized tribe, notwithstanding not having trust land. So my concern in how it is written is that it seems that it would exclude us since we do not have reservation land at this point. My tribe currently has a land in the trust application for 2 parcels of land, and per our bill, it's a mandatory trust application. And so that's basically what I have to say. And the other 5 tribes that are on the bill would be in the same predicament. 2 of the other tribes, the Pamunkey Indian Nation and the Rappahannock Indian Nation, we are working as a consortium on the 2.5 gigahertz priority window. And we're in a rural area. We have most of our people don't have high speed internet. They're dependent on satellite. And it's an issue, especially with kids not in school, because they're having to go sit in the school parking lot to have Wi-Fi access and so on. That's basically all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Reggie. We will definitely take that into consideration. We do have that noted, so we will work on finding a way to answer that question for you. Thank you. All right, Laura.
Yes, thank you, Reggie. And Robert Gray, I have unmuted your line. If you tell us what tribe you're representing and share your comments.
Chief Robert Gray with the Pamunkey Indian Tribe. I share some of the concerns that Reggie just gave, but I'm also concerned of unserved areas. Our area, FCC RDOF, we have a company that obtained the auction for our area via the RDOF funds. Yet we can't make contact with that company to find out what their plans are. And I'm concerned that this program will run into problems because these companies with the RDOF. I would also add that as far as program eligibility, unserved areas, we're a tribe where even our tribal offices do not have broadband. Our tribal government does not have broadband access. And I believe that needs to be considered a priority in addition to our tribal citizens, because we can't serve our citizens properly without broadband ourselves. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Chief Gray. And we have definitely captured those comments, and thank you for your feedback.
Yes, thank you. And next up, I have Will Micklin. I've got your line unmuted if you'd like to share your comments or ask a question.
Hi, Will Micklin. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Will.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
So, Will Micklin, my name is Jan Yanish. I'm a second vice president, Central Council, Clinton Tribes of Alaska. Also CEO, Weepipe Bandicoot Indians. I have a couple of questions. I've submitted written questions. I'll submit some more written. I'll be brief on this. Rather than go through the questions, I'll just provide recommendations, which will imply the discussion. But the couple of recommendations. One is that the proceeds from the B1 grants, tribal grants, be allowed to be used as for the non-federal share, satisfy the non-federal share of other broadband programs like a Community Connect or Reconnect program under USDA, or other programs, whether they're from FCC or BIA. Those typically have large non-federal share requirements or tribal match up to 50%, and it would be most helpful if we could leverage those programs with this program. I don't see a prohibition on it in the Act, and that interpretation would be favorable to tribes. I am very hopeful the interpretation for this program does not require that the covered area or the tribal lands have no overlay of other grant proceeds. USDA Rural Connectivity Pilot Program, USDA Reconnect Program, Title VI Rural Electrification, Community Connect Program, RDOF, the CARES Act. In other, we've had problems where proceeds from broadband grants in the area that have not been used to deploy broadband in tribal areas, although awarded for that area, typically a census area, count against the tribe and prohibit the award of funds for those purposes. And I would recommend the Secretary not take an interpretation that any award in the census area or the covered area or the tribal lands, whatever definition is used, would preclude use of funds for a tribal program. I do recommend that we do recommend the qualifying broadband service, the 25 meg, 3 meg, be the floor. It is that has been exceeded in many areas, but typically not provided in tribal areas. We are just hopeful that the interpretation be not to favor applications or deployments that are at the low end and would allow higher speed connections. For unserved area, we do recommend that that be certified by the tribe. The tribes have consistently and uniformly testified before the USDA and FCC and BIA that the broadband deployment maps are inaccurate, that many carriers assert coverage over tribal areas that do not exist. And rather than relying on those maps, we recommend self-certification by the tribe and affirmation by the awarding entity if that's in doubt. We have a number of other recommendations. The only one I'll touch upon is allocation. The Weary Pipe Reservation is unserved. It's off-grid entirely. Many villages in Southeast Alaska are underserved, or if served, are served only for a specific program purpose and are overcharged remarkably for that service, many hundreds of dollars for 10 up and 1 down, for example. So we think that the unserved should be expansive and include both, provide favorable funding both to unserved and underserved communities so that there is wider deployment rather than just to anchor institutions, which are typically IHS or some specific program, E-rate or library fund. We're hoping the allocation is based on the merit and only secondarily on population. Many underserved and unserved tribes require a very expensive middle mile deployment, which is disproportionate to the customer pool. If there were sufficient customers, there would be service there already. Typically, it's the small population and the large cost of middle mile to backhaul the backbone into the community for last mile deployment. That is a huge problem, and this program would help, we hope, help fund that, knowing that the costs of middle mile can be not tracked to population. So we hope that low population will not disqualify from funding for a necessary component for deployment, which is middle mile. I'll reserve my others for the next meetings and also for written submissions. Thank you very much, and good to see you, Adam.
Good to see you, Vice President Micklin. Thank you again for your comments and your feedback. Thank you for your candor, I mean, frankly. And again, for everyone on the line, for those of you that may have had conversations prior to the engagement that we're having today, again, the comments and feedback that we receive both verbally through this process as well as in written format are critical to creating a baseline or a record for us to look to develop the program. And so thank you, Vice President Micklin, for being able to be so succinct with your comments. Appreciate the feedback. Thank you. All right, Laura.
Adam, we've got a number of folks teed up, so I just want to let folks know that I've got you in the queue. Next, I have Paula, I think it's Pishon. I'll let you correct the pronunciation. I've gotten that wrong, and tell us who you're representing. I had Brian McDonald, Matt Thomas, and Peter McCaslin in that order. So Paula, I will unmute your line. And Paula, we should be able to hear you now.
This is Joe. I'd like to go after that list that you just provided. It's Joe Garcia.
Not a problem, Councilman Garcia. Paula, are you coming through okay? Let's see.
I'm all right. I'm going to come back. I'm trying to keep a good list. I'll come back to Paula. And go to Brian McDonald. I'll be unmuting your line. Brian McDonald, your line is unmuted. If you could.
Sure. I'm Brian McDonald. I'm with the Stockbridge-Muncie community, a Band of Mohican Nation in Stockbridge, or Boulder, Wisconsin. The question is more geared to, we already have a project in place where we're funding a large deployment, and is there a possibility to recoup some of the funds for the tribe based on the rollout of the fiber project covering the community and the backhaul?
So this is, Mr. McDonald, this is a project that you guys started during COVID?
Yes, it was started. It was something that was started to cover telehealth. We're an underserved area. There was DSL that was minimal at best. Had been working with an engineering firm to get things moving, and then with COVID coming, started moving it along at a quicker rate to cover the telehealth and the educational needs.
Gotcha. Do you mind sharing an example of the expenses that you'd be looking to try to recoup?
Well, we have roughly $300,000 in engineering fees. We have the total project itself is going to be roughly $5 million.
And so you're looking to,
and then
your pre-development or your planning expenses.
The planning expansions, and actually we're in the process of we're actually in the process of, we started laying fiber before obviously weather got hold of us.
Yeah, it sometimes snows this time of year in Wisconsin, right?
Right. So, and then we also have the 2.5 gigahertz wireless spectrum. We're still waiting for approval on. That will require to cover areas where we just can't afford to get fiber. Just for context, in this area, the going rate for a mile of fiber is $55,000.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Ms. McDonald?
I'm sorry, can you repeat did you have another question, or was that someone else?
I was just asking Mr. McDonald if he had any additional comments, or if that.
No, that was it. I was just curious if there would be an opportunity to recoup.
Gotcha. Again, we're collecting the feedback, so I apologize. I don't mean to be rude if I don't respond to that. I think this is all part of that process of understanding the need to develop. So thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And next I have Matt Thomas. Give me a minute and I will unmute your line. Matt Thomas, your line has been unmuted. If you'd like to share your comments.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr.
Yeah, I'm Matt Tomas, and I'm actually the grant writer for the Habema Tolel Pumo of Upper Lake, located in Lake County, California. We're one of 7 federally recognized tribes in the county. But yes, I want to reinforce Will's concerns and problems he had about the service area maps for the providers. It's very difficult to get accurate maps about where they actually provide coverage. And our old rancheria is located in the middle of one zip code area that most of it gets high-speed internet service, but it's unclear, and they haven't been able to provide me very good answers about additional costs, and maybe I'm just talking to the wrong people. But I would think that if we can get more accurate maps about where the service areas are, then we would have a better idea of what that middle mile cost would be to extend the service. That's a problem. And then I also had some ideas about maybe how to streamline the environmental review process. our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer has been working to get this unique GIS-based program that has an inventory of all archaeological reports in the area. And you can click in the area and create a radius, and all those existing reports come up. And I will provide more detail in some written comments later. But one way of like at least knowing that you may be coming up with some problems is if you had access to this database.
Sure.
And you had a sense of where the alignment would be if you're laying new fiber, you can like anticipate where you might have some issues about archaeological monitoring, things like that. But we don't have that capability yet right now, but we are working towards that.
Is that effort directly with the tribe itself, or are you working in a consortium or through another partner at the state or federal level?
No, it is our own effort. And Robert is our new THPO, and he's worked for another tribe, 2 counties over, but he's come back to Lake County. Fairly good, and I think the subscription is by one firm, unfortunately, but they have this unique program, and they've collected all the archaeological reports out there, and they make it available for like $30,000. It's a little, you know, if you have a monopoly on that, it's kind of price gouging. But anyway, we're working on getting that kind of function in our office. But you know, it's the service providers that don't provide very clear information, and it's not clear to us, you know, in terms of how much it costs for that last line. You know, we're having trouble with that. I should also say that the state of California PUC is, they have an existing grant program for tribes that offer funding to at least do feasibility studies to determine, you know, how much that would cost. They're also providing funding to establish market studies and also to help develop business plans. Some of the tribes were thinking about creating publicly owned utilities that they would control, and if they could establish that, others around neighbors who don't have service could tap into that utility function. So those are just ideas and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. And, you know, I send my best to the folks in the Upper Lake region. We know that the wildfires over the last few years have been another challenge that you've been battling.
I got evacuated twice last year.
Go ahead.
I got evacuated twice last year, so I feel you. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. So definitely pulling out of that your feedback, some of the challenges you have in even being able to do the pre-planning, and it sounds like maybe a technical assistance element is also part of what you're describing. Is that fair to? I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but
that's accurate. The California PUC program. We're supposed to engage the technical communications to consultants, which is a reimbursable cost later. We engage a consultant to help prepare the application and the feasibility study proposal to be considered for funding. And then once that work is completed, we then just ask for reimbursement at that point. So it's like we put the money up front and then you get reimbursed once the work is completed. And I'll send information about the California PUC program as well for you. So maybe you guys can get some, glean some information or ideas from that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. And I do think that Mr. Thomas points out a good thing for consideration in your feedback and comments as well. For those of you that are looking at, in terms of collaboration, are you also, as you're approaching this process and thinking about your application, are you looking at leveraging state partners or regional partners? I think Mr. Thomas gave a good couple of examples of that. And so if you have any feedback along those lines, please also feel free to add that into your comments so we can get a good sense of the types of resources, because it's going to be different in every state. You're all going to have different types of things at the state level or regional level that maybe isn't at the national level. It would be good to have an awareness of that if you're open to sharing that. So thank you, Mr. Thomas. Laura?
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, do we still have you?
Apologies, I was talking on mute. I'm trying to figure out, Peter McCaslin is up next, but I can't tell if he has audio. Mr. McCaslin, are you on the line? Okay, let's see if we can come back to that. And
we'll put him on the. We'll why don't we build the list, Laura, and then we'll come back one more time as we conclude.
Exactly, I'm keeping those as well. So next I had Chuck Reese. Chuck, I'll be unmuting your line. Mr. Reese?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
All right. My name is Chuck Reese. I'm the infrastructure administrator with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes here in Pablo, Montana. We are on a checkerboard reservation, about 1.3 million acres. We do have a main corridor, the Highway 93 corridor, the Glacier corridor that goes from Missoula up, clear into Canada through Glacier Park and that area. And then we have another highway that cuts around the west side of the reservation over in our Camas area, Highway 206. It's actually the perfect ring, if you will, to expand out our network. We did use the CARES funding, and we were fully granted the 2.5 network. We did we were able to meet the December 31st deadline, even though it was extended. It was kind of crazy, but we were able to build 480-foot carrier grade towers, all fed with fiber generators, 27 micro pops. It was a heck of a challenge, but we did get it. But like a lot of tribes, up until 4 or 5 years ago, we were fairly complacent with telecommunications and just, kind of worked with what we had in the local exchanges and where we could build, short runs of fiber for our campus networks and stuff, we did as necessary. But, as the funding sources came available, we realized, some of them, we didn't even have the minimum infrastructure nor support to even meet the minimum requirements of some of those funding sources until the CARES Act came along. Right. And then, as we're diving further into this and networking with other tribes and folks like Danae Wilson and Mariel Triggs that are just awesome at what they do and kind of getting people lined out, we came on pretty strong. And in doing so, we also, we're seeing where we're short as far as funding sources and sustainability of these networks. Right. Right now with the towers, we were able to bring the fiber from on tribal land at the top of these high points down to these corridors, but then we're subject to the local exchanges. We have to pay them a premium for transport on their existing fiber facilities to get it back to our tribal headquarters to transport our network out to those towers to be able to broadcast that network. The problem we're having is the closest internet hotel is in Missoula, and that's like 70 miles away. And we need to get that connected directly to a carrier so that we can get our wholesale bandwidth. Right now, just to feed our network, we pay $2,000 a month for one connection and about $1,800 a month for another connection for redundant internet connectivity through the organization. And that feeds all of our tribal health facilities, our tribal operations across the board with that one gig connection. And we talked to just a carrier, Hurricane Electric, and we can get a wholesale flat rate 10 gig link for $1,200 a month. I know one of our local exchanges has two 10 gig backhaul that they feed their 3,500 customers or subscribers with, and we're subject to their downtime, or if we need more bandwidth, we have to go through them. or if we need to extend our network out further, we have to use their existing facilities, their existing fiber facilities to connect our towers. So, you know, when you talk about equitable distribution, I think middle mile, and I've heard this across the board now, is a huge component to that. And I'm not sure if that component to get a fiber built like off the reservation down to the internet hotel, so that we can actually serve ourselves and serve our wireless 2.5 network, to get that underserved connectivity out there. I guess I'm.
So you're thinking about wanting to essentially bypass others and in order to just go direct to the
Yes.
the internet. Okay.
If without it, we have to negotiate these IRUs with the local exchanges to get those services. We have to have IRUs in place right now just to connect our towers back to Pablo on their fiber, and we're subject to all of these constraints by them. It's almost like they're intimidated that we're putting in this type of network. We've worked with them for a long time. They're kind of the only game in town, but I think the further we, have our independence with our network, the more we could provide to the community, the tribal membership, and the local community. Especially when you start throwing around words that, little to no cost or free internet, it really disrupts the apple cart.
Absolutely. Understood.
I just want to make sure that, these funding sources that are coming up that really address that middle mile in internet backhaul, because without it, it's hard to sustain the network, especially when you're getting quoted, $500,000. Sure. And okay, say we can't do it out of pocket, with the funding source, that some of those are $2,000 a month for the next 20 years. Right. And you start adding every single leg of your dark fiber and your transport services and your backhaul, you're talking $8,000, $9,000 a month for something you're not getting any money for. You're not bringing any money in to support that network.
So, Mr. Reese, I absolutely think one of the things I'm hearing, and I just wanted to clarify it with you in this conversation, as you've highlighted the needs up in Salish Kootenai country, kind of comes down to the duplication concerns that we're frankly wanting to hear some of these examples. So this is I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, because it sounds to me like that is part of what your concern is that you're having here, is that your ability to spend those dollars and what you need to do to really provide affordable service to your community. It sounds like you have some concerns around being able to spend those dollars in order to do that. Did I hear that correctly?
It is, and I know there's existing fiber in the ground, but you talk to the exchanges like down in Missoula, where they, south of us, and then they meet up with the existing exchange here on the reservation. It's almost like a mafia between the two on how we get that connectivity through here. Even the state, and all of these facilities were funded by BTOP, ACAM, and all this, and you can go back historically and look at all of their reasons why they were going to put this in. And the first ones they say is, oh, we're going to support the tribal community and underserved tribal areas. But at the end of the day, when we've never really asked them for anything, and then we start to try to negotiate just even the transport for the backhaul from Missoula to here, and it's astronomical. It's not even sustainable on our end.
Gotcha.
And so why not just put in our own services and just be independent of those costs? And it's a one and done, and we don't have to worry about it.
Understood. Well, do you have anything else, Mr. Reese, that you'd like to add into your comments?
No, I guess that's it for now. Sorry I get riled up.
This is a tough conversation, because the impacts that you see in your community and that we're all seeing in Indian country has really been exacerbated by COVID. And you know, it's okay to be passionate. We appreciate the passion because we know that's coming from a good place. So so thank you for your comments and your clarification on the duplication discussion and how folks have used the have used the demographic information to serve your tribe in the past, and it doesn't sound like that may be where things are. So thank you. On a side note, hopefully at some point we can make our way up to Salish. I have a strong affinity for huckleberry ice cream. Montana is a beautiful state. So thank you for your comments, Mr. Reese. Who do we have next?
My next.
So Adam,
yes, please.
I thought that we had Councilman Garcia had wanted to add his comments, and then I've got a few folks who I think we're going to have to open the lines to, including I'll let Councilman Garcia make his remarks, and then just know I am tracking in the questions and other places, trying to keep up. Apologies if it's taking me a few minutes to get back to you, but I will.
Not a problem. Laura, do you happen to have the kind of the batting lineup? So we'll have Councilman Garcia, and then who do we have after Councilman Garcia, just so they're aware?
So that's what I was kind of trying to check my notes on. I have Norma Contreras, who had a hand up and now I don't see anymore. And then we had missed Paula Pichon and Henry Kagi. And then I have Samantha Skinador, who and a couple of folks who have let me know that they're on the phone. So we will, in order to get to them, have to open up all of the lines. So that's what I've got on my notes. And like I said, if you didn't hear your name, please send me a note in the questions. And if it takes me a minute, just know that I am keeping track. It's just taking me to get to all of them.
Thank you. All right, Councilman Garcia, do we have you on the line?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all the other representatives for coming online. I need to make 3 points. One is just a prelude, and I think it has to do with not so much the consultation part of it, but just reality in Indian country, and that is that if you're talking about any kind of bill, first you have to have a good idea of where you are in terms of what your infrastructure locally looks like. Are we starting at ground level, or is there a city nearby or a node with high speed enough to help you along, or are you starting from scratch completely, and that puts you at a lower level of preparedness, if you will? And then depending on where you are is a big factor in how the funding can really provide for the needs of the community and your citizenship. That's a prelude. So I think it needs to be part of the concept of what's happening with the this program. So that's a prelude. The second thing is a point I'd like to make, and it talks to the situation in I think Montana. Is that the one that we just heard about?
Yes,
And
sir.
what we have in northern New Mexico is a project that started up in the ERA funding cycle back in 2010. And there was a partnership between 4 tribes and 3 other entities, Rio Riva County in New Mexico, and the other ones were a couple of the cities, Santa Fe and County and Rio Riva County, and then the city of Espanola, which are non-tribal communities. And so what we have is the middle mile part already done. That project went over well, was completed, and so we're providing services currently. However, if you think about a government to government, we're talking about a local government. The tribe, the 4 tribes that are members, and then the city government, and then the county governments, which are part of the state. This happened to a consortium, and it's called ReadyNet for Regional Economic Development, but the project is up and running. And I'll tell you where we're running the problems. The problems we have are not so much the middle mile, it's the last mile. And the last mile is when you really get to the communities. Now, and it's been hard we've got like several nodes here in my pueblo at Okewinge, but getting that last mile provider into our community has been the you might call it a chokehold, because somebody already mentioned that there's not enough money to be made by these last mile providers. At least that's an excuse. And so other entities, last mile providers, are not willing to bite the bullet to provide the services off of this middle mile as the last mile provider. But I think in this consultation, you did talk about consortiums, but it didn't say anything about tribal and non-tribal consortiums. I want to be sure that we are able to include them, because in this case, it's a model that could be used throughout Indian country. And I just see another model right up in Montana already. And so if they use the same concept, I think it would be a great deal, and everybody benefits, especially now with COVID situation. That's been if we didn't have this ReadyNet provision for northern New Mexico, I don't know where we would be, because those last mile providers would never have come in at all. So that's a potential solution, but it could be a potential solution throughout Indian country in the United States of America. So that's my second point. And the third one is when you're talking about requirements or conditions upon which the funding may be made available, has to do with the 2.5 gigahertz licenses, the spectrum. And that in itself should not be used as a prerequisite in order to promote the funds that are available, because that happened just a year ago. And so the tribes, some have got licensed, some have not even applied, even though they may have been eligible. But then there are some that could not apply because the spectrum wasn't available in their area. So through no fault of their own. But that's the final point that I wanted to make. Make sure that that is not a prerequisite, that if they want to use that and the tribes have it, more power to them. It's a technology that's available and they can use it in that way, but they should not be required to have it in order to receive funding from this program. So with all of that, I'll give more time to other people, but thank you for the opportunity. And I'll probably be on the next two calls as well later.
Thank you, council member. Thank you. Good to hear your voice, and thank you for sharing that feedback. And absolutely just heard what you said regarding not making the 2.5 a litmus test or a prerequisite for eligibility for the fund. So along with all the other very well articulated comments that you made, thank you. All right, Laura, who do we have next?
All right. I'm going to try Paula again, who did ping me in the chat. Give me 1 second, and let's see. Paula, is it Kashawn? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm all set. I do not have a question. I'm very sorry.
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. All right. Then the next, Samantha has indicated to me that Representative Hinu, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Smith, has a comment, and she, I believe, is on via the phone line. So Gilbert, I'm going to actually have to ask you, I think in order for us to hear her, you're going to actually have to unmute all of the lines, if you could do that for us. And then
when we do that, okay, so for all of you, when we unmute the lines, you may need to remute your phone. So as we open up the lines, in order for each individual to speak, can you please, if you're not speaking, mute your device? Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say everyone now has. Yeah, I was just going to say everyone now has audio control. Samantha will just need to hit *6 to begin speaking on her device.
Okay, I think it's Representative Hinu Smith is the person who's on audio. No worries. And so I guess, like as Adam and Gilbert indicated, if you could mute your individual lines so that we can hear Representative Smith, that would be wonderful. And then we'll remute the lines and go back to the next folks in line. I have Sally Fineday and Peter McCaslin.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
This is Hinu Smith. Can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted.
We can. I feel like can you hear me now is the new term for the last year and a half. Yes, we can hear you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for accommodating. I know this is, kind of a really wonky way to have a meeting and consultation, but, technology, I hate it, love it. It's amazing. So this is fantastic. Thank you. Hinu Smith, legislative representative of the Ho-Chunk Nation, and just by virtue of my position, I do have authority to speak for the nation. So in preparation for this meeting, I just had some comments that I will just read from. So I pre-apologize for not just kind of adhering to your areas for today, but we will be drafting further comments and hitting on those areas and trying to break it down that way for your convenience. So just bear with me while I read this. I would appreciate it. The Ho-Chunk Nation is a reservationless tribe. Throughout Indian country, this is often referred to as being landless. But we are not exactly landless. We do own scattered parcels, over 11,000 acres, located predominantly through 22 acres in Wisconsin, or 22 counties in Wisconsin. We also have parcels in Minnesota and in Illinois. We have an additional 3,500 acres of individually owned allotment homestead acres. Each of the land holdings represents a historical village site, ancestral to Ho-Chunk Nation. Ho-Chunk once held a title to 10.5 million acres before the treaties were signed. These scattered lands are homes to many of our tribal members. We had nearly 8,000 tribal members. And our government services, satellite offices, and economic development enterprises, and of course our cultural sacred sites as well. And more. Ho-Chunk Nation is a unique situation because we must develop these critical networks in these scattered communities. We submitted 8 applications to the FCC under the Rural Tribal Window Opportunity for Spectrum License over our land, which, by the way, is also designated rural land constituting underserved and unserved areas. These applications are still pending. The task ahead of us is immense. We are in the unique situation to have a partner with several local governments, including the state and various rural private service providers, to build the multiple networks that our communities need. Financial support is critical for the planning and implementation of the technical connectivity solutions. We'll need support from the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, and the program must meet the unique needs of tribes situated like the Ho-Chunk Nation. The program funding must be equitable and non-discriminatory to tribes without a reservation, because we will need support for both infrastructure deployment and broadband programming. We cannot be limited to development connectivity for only one community, because to do so would not only be discriminatory to other communities, but would deny our tribal communities the critical connectivity they need for telehealth, distance learning, education, employment, and law enforcement, and emergency services, including additional items as well. The program must be built to allow us to address the unique needs and the challenges of each of our scattered 7 communities, including Black River Falls, Wisconsin Dells, Tomah, Wittenberg, Madison, Beloit, and more collectively. We look forward to working with NTIA and others to help shape the program so that it truly mitigates the effects of COVID-19, of the COVID-19 pandemic to tribes, including those situated like the Ho-Chunk Nation. Thank you. And I also, before I mute myself, I hope that the slides from the WebEx will also be made available to everybody that registered too. Some of us are calling it on the phone because we don't have good connection. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Smith from the Ho-Chunk Nation, for your feedback and the awareness that we need to take when it comes down to considerations regarding your tribe. In response to your question about the slides, if you go to the Broadband USA website, you will actually find the links to all the content associated with this particular with the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Grant Program, including this slide deck. And we also welcome you to come back or submit your responses in writing as well. And thank you for your thoughtful words and your representation on behalf of your nation. Thank you. Who do we have next, Laura?
All right. I think Peter McCaslin. Let me see. Peter, can you let me know? Can you
hear me?
I can't tell if we're going to be able to. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, we figured it out. Good morning from Alaska, everyone. I'm Peter McCaslin. I'm the IT Director for Kenaisi Indian Tribe in South Central Alaska. I serve on the FCC Native Nations Tribal Broadband Task Force with Joe and Will, and probably a number of others on this call. I've got to tell you that I do support Will Micklin's statement on the financial issues that we face up here in Alaska. Things are a little bit different. We're not a tribal reservation type program. We do have lands here that they for us. We have filed for the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. I do have concerns with the speed of the approval process of the 2.5 gigahertz filing, and if we will even be able to utilize the $7 billion recently released in COVID funding from December of last year. They put a few dates that you have to use it. We were one of the first tribes to actually file, and it appears they're working that list backwards if you look at it to me. So I do have concerns if that funding is even going to be available by the time we're approved. Our status in Alaska and South Central where I live is current infrastructure extends down the main arteries of the road system in Alaska. A lot of our tribal members live out beyond 3 to 4 miles from that artery and do not get any type of service. As an example, I'll tell you that we had to transition to utilization of the Zoom for healthcare. A lot of our tribal members didn't even have the bandwidth to be able to utilize a video session. And at the last moment, we had to stop, drop, and roll and install additional PRI lines so that we could do phone visits with these people. The amount of phone calls that our system had used was exceeding our capacity, and we had to increase capacity on the phone lines just to be able to do at-home visits with our patients. A lot of our current infrastructure extends out to places like, it'll make it as far as a refinery down the road, but it doesn't go the last mile into the residential neighborhoods. So making it that last mile is going to be very critical as far as this funding goes. So I think for the most part, that's the extent of my comments. The area I live in is like the size of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont all together. and we're just a small segment of the state. And thank you for putting this program together. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. McCaslin. Sorry. Thank you so much for your feedback. And we absolutely understand that Alaska has a lot of unique challenges, purely based on where it's located on the globe, and with the topography. And so we appreciate your feedback and the comments that you made regarding the health services, and some of those bandwidth issues that you're having, and how you see this as, my understanding is how you see this as a solution to solve, especially those last mile issues that you're having. So thank you for providing that feedback. And again, if you have more comments into the future, or you want to come back for the next sessions, I would also encourage you to do that, as well as submitting any additional feedback through our email account. Thank you.
Very good. All right. So next up.
More coffee.
All right. Next up, I have Sally Fineday. Miss Fineday, I've unmuted your line.
Bonjour, this is Sally Fineday.
Hello,
I'm a
Sally.
member of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, and I work for the organization as a grant writer. And I've been in the industry for about 10 years now. One of the problems that we have currently is that we have people who are living in areas that do not have internet access. And I don't think it's because of the fact that there isn't access available there, it's just that they can't afford it. And during this COVID, I just talked to a person yesterday who said that the daughter has a card that's given to her child from school. And the issue with that card is that it's used via a cell phone, and then the child is doing homework via a cell phone. And it's unreasonable, I think. But I think also that we have 15 communities in our 60 by 60 mile area that's well wooded, forested, lakes. It's really unreasonable for people who are living in outlying communities a lot of them don't have regular jobs. They're living off the land. Those people are the ones who are being missed in this opportunity. As far as equitable distribution, I have to agree that, we should consider our population when we're going to be distributing, and definitely our unique needs differ from tribe to tribe. But I'd also like to affirm too that the broadband map is definitely not accurate as far as our tribal lands. I just looked at it a couple days ago, and it says that we only have a small portion on the western side of our reservation that's unserved or needs service, and that's not accurate. I would also like to say that our tribe should certify who's unserved in our area. And mostly, I think it's the fact for our people, we have 40% of our population are living below poverty level. And for them to have internet access on a fiber that's coming to their home is almost, they're not going to be able to afford it. We are recently working on attempting to get fiber to all of our 15 community centers. And the problem that we run into with grant opportunities like USDA or USAF is that they're using the maps and they're saying that there's already areas, those areas are already served. And they may be already served, but I think that what we're experiencing too is sustainability. Yes, we could go ahead and use the fiber that's there and use the service that's being provided, but we're so widespread in our 60 by 60 mile area that it's not cost effective for us. It's best if we had our own fiber from our headquarters to our 15 areas, then we could administer that especially because it's so far out and so many people don't have the money to pay for internet. we would probably then, get it out to the community center and then send it through the air using our recently acquired 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. Thank you.
Sally, can I ask you a quick question? Thank you for your comments first. So when you were talking about, you led the conversation with an affordability discussion. So would you envision, do you see an application process for your tribe and your needs as something that would address both like the immediate affordability challenges that you have? Because as you said, there are those that have a level of access, but it's an affordability challenge, as well as an application that may address the infrastructure thoughts that you had, as you had mentioned, where you have a central point where you're feeding in your fiber and then using 2.5 to wirelessly get that through your communities. Is that kind of, I'm just trying to understand how you would see if you were able to write your own application or structure your application, how would you structure this process?
I think, with our need to serve ourselves, one of the things that the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe has done since 1999 because we live in such a broad area. And at the time in 1999, there was 5 or 6 companies that were serving our tribal lands. And for us to pay all those bills and for it to have somebody come out and change the telephone line from here to there was really costly. So from 1999 on, the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe's tribal government utilized spectrum and sent a signal out to our community centers at that point. So we're not unfamiliar with sending a signal through the via wireless because of the fact that we are a heavily wooded area. I'm understanding that the new spectrum that we have acquired is going to be better serve that mode. However, what I'm working on now is how do we get beyond those maps, because so many of our areas are marked served, and it's not true. And even if they are marked served, people that are living there can't afford it. So that's why I'm recommending that we have that we serve our own. We've been doing it for quite a while with our government, and a lot of times people here in rural America, I understand satellite is coming up to speed. I personally, when I moved to Leech Lake in 2007, had satellite, and it was very expensive, and it was challenging because of the weather. And even if people were to get satellite today, I understand that it's going to be about $100 a month.
Oh, we might have lost you, Sally. Oh, Sally?
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yep, this is Sally.
Take 2 steps to the right, Sally.
I'm actually one of those. I was in an underserved area. I'm working from my home office today, and I have my internet comes in on a T1 line, a copper line into my house. It's on a booster. It's fairly reasonable for me. I think $50 a month is reasonable. I don't do gaming or anything like that. But when 2 people are using the internet, my daughter goes with me currently. She's going to tribal college. It's challenging at times, as far as streaming. So we live in rural Minnesota, and it's very rural here. There is the lack of opportunity for affordable internet service is a major issue with 40% of our population.
Thank you, Sally, for clarifying that a little bit more for us in terms of where you're coming from with all your comments, and again, appreciate your candor. Miigwech, thank you.
Miigwech.
I will just add that Mr. Chuck Reese also said, "Well said, Sally." I thought I'd pass that along from the chat box. Let's see. I've tried to check with folks who I saw hands up earlier but didn't now. And the only one I have up now was Henry KG, and I just lost that one. There you are. I will be unmuting you. And Mr. KG, if you could state who you're representing, then your line is open.
Mr. KG. Let's see. Okay, Mr. KG, are you there? Or KG? Laura, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I cannot hear
Henry. Henry, we'll give it about maybe 10 more seconds. Mr. KG?
It seems like he's trying, but not coming through.
Gotcha.
I'm going to try one more time. What we can do is see if the trouble is that he's on via phone or something. Gilbert, can I ask you again to unmute all, and let's see if that opens up the line for him.
All right, I've unmuted him, or all.
All right. Okay. I do see that Aaron Payment, Mr. Payment, has his hand up again, and I believe you're live.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll fill in while we're waiting to see if we can connect. So I did have another pass through or around coming back around, circling back.
Sure.
So one of the comments I wanted to provide on the reporting requirements criteria input is, that's another area that we were asked during the CARES Act consultation, and we had I believe that Indian Country gave a really good explanation of what we already are accustomed to, what we already do in terms of the various funding sources. Like my tribe has 9 different budget cycles, and we perform no less than 6 individual audits. And so tribes are very conventional and up to date with knowing how to report information. And so what I would suggest is that, tribes have to follow government accounting practices and all of that, is that the reporting requirement should be based on our application. So if we say we're going to do a particular thing by a particular time, the reporting should match that. And beyond that, I don't think there's a need for any additional requirements to be imposed on tribes. I can tell you during the discussion during the CARES Act consultation, it demonstrated that Treasury just had no clue of how to communicate with tribes as sovereigns, tribes as highly regulated and comprehensive systems for reporting our financial expenditures. So I don't think a lot of time should be spent on that. I think that the requirements for reporting should match what's proposed in the respective applications that tribes submit. But I also wanted to suggest, and given that it's not already in the legislation, I'm not sure how this happens unless there's a comparable funding source for non-tribal local governments and regions. And so during infrastructure testimony on behalf of NCAI, I testified that in order to make these resources go further, it would make sense if the match dollars outside of the tribe's eligibility would have some language in it that would encourage them to collaborate with tribal applicants. And the reason for that is because the money is huge, it's $1 billion, but the need in Indian country far exceeds the amount that's being made available. And with broadband and connectivity, this is like a major infrastructural deficit that we have as a country. And so the $1 billion is not going to close that gap. The money that is made available to state and local governments is not going to fill that gap. And so wherever possible, encouraging public-private partnerships, I think would be helpful. But now, having said that, I don't think that should be a stipulation on the tribal side. I think it should be on the outside of the tribal side so that they know enough to reach out to us to collaborate. And of course, we think very innovatively that way. And if a local government had that requirement, we would reach out to them and say, oh, by the way, you can meet your additional point threshold by collaborating with us. And here we have some money to apply as well. And so that's on the public side, but also on the private side, any kind of incentives that exist for private companies to reach out to tribes would be appreciated as well.
You're speaking along the lines of making sure this comes back to that. I think we had in the equitable distribution segment, but making sure that people aren't writing applications on your behalf or saying they're going to serve you without your knowledge.
Oh, absolutely.
Not knowledge, without your approval.
Right,
correct?
Right. It should come with an articulated agreement on how we'll collaborate. And when that happens, then the outside agencies are required to come back to us. And the thing is, I use it as an example, and this is a little off topic for broadband, but in my community, we have we're checkerboard. So we have our original reservation which is within town. And then we have a satellite operation about 2.5 miles out of town, and it's outside of the city limits. And so in order for us to have water and sewer out there, other than dig wells, would be to tap into the city infrastructure. And we collaborated in our application. We have a 1-to-1, so we're not charged. Normally outside of city limits, it's 1.5. So it's 1-to-1, but it benefits the city because we pay down their infrastructural costs because we just added 300 more users. And so we got some money under ARA for that, and that was not designed that way, but we structured it that way because we knew we couldn't build a whole new infrastructure. And so that's an example of the government partnerships that will help this infrastructure need go a lot further. So I think the same is true for broadband. Like I said earlier, during the equitable distribution, and I use the 50-30-20 split, we have a checkerboard reservation. We have satellite health center in Escanaba, Michigan, which is a 3-hour drive from here. So our needs are great. They're just as great there as they are here, probably greater because they're more rural than we are here. And so, connecting between the 160 miles across a very rural community and facilitating connections with local governments across the Upper Peninsula, I think as an incentive to get them to work with us will make their dollars. And it's a win-win-win. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Pam. And just as a reminder, we do have I believe is that the phone line that we still have open, Laura? So it
does sound like we do, just to make sure that folks can beep in. So We've got a little bit more background noise, and would just ask if folks can mute their own lines so that folks who are otherwise unable to participate. All right, I'm gonna try. I've got fellow investor. Is that Mr. Oh, I see. That's a different email address for Mr. Henry. Let me try.
What, stay? Did you say that? Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try to mute the lines because it sounds like we've got some background noise, and then.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Kagi.
Oh, gosh, what the heck?
Is that you?
Yes, it is. I'm on my phone now. I couldn't get my computer I couldn't figure that thing out.
You should have seen the prep session.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my apologies for any of the technical elements here. But thank you for being patient with us. The floor is yours. If you wouldn't mind saying your full name, title, and who you're representing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Henry Kagi with the Lummi Nation, and I'm a council member for a long time, about over 30 years now. So I'm not a techie, Adam. So I really don't understand all the stuff that goes with the terms with broadband. But you know, for Lummi, is that we have a grant that we submitted, and we got the planning done. But it's engineering that we need to build on, and I don't know if that 2% is going to cover that or not. We don't know. But with Lummi, we have it like some folks you heard is that we have a checkerboard reservation with tribal and non-tribal people. We have a provider on the reservation, which he's doing his best he can, but the service that he has isn't that good. So what happens is their kids get online in school and they either get bumped off or there's not enough room for them to do that because you can only have one computer. Then you had 2 or 3 other kids in the room. It's not working. Mm-hmm. So we have service, but we want our own service. And so one of the things that Lummi wants to do is that we see this as an opportunity to put our own system in. And we want to, we want to have it in a way that provides services to our people that we want to do. And right now, we don't want to be punished by you folks because we have service from another provider. And we want to do it ourselves. We hope you're going to respect our request to build out our system the way Lummi wants to do it. So we want to move it that way. We do want to know if we can buy this guy out. If he has a few fiber lines out here, but can we buy existing lines that are out here? We don't know that either. That's a question that we have is can we buy this line that he has and upgrade it? Because for years it's been the non-Indians out here get the best service and the Indians get the worst. And so they seem to have it organized where the non-Indians have the best service. They got what they have in town, and we get what's kind of left over. So it's good, but it's not. I don't know what you call it, underserved or under something. But that's one issue.
Let me ask you a question, Councilman Kagi. Do you feel like it's like that service is inadequate or it's not meeting the need today?
It's not meeting the need. And again, is that we want to exercise our own authority to do it ourselves. So we take control of what we give our people, and we want it to be affordable. A lot of our people, our families are poor, and they can't afford the $80, $90 a month that people have to pay. And we want this service to be affordable for our people, and not giving it to some company that really doesn't care about the Indians and do it ourselves.
Understood.
So when you get to tribal lands, I'm going to go right down to the AT&I folks. We kind of put some talking points together. So I'm going to lay those out at them.
Please.
Okay, so number one, tribal resolutions. Tribal resolutions should be required for all applications purporting to serve tribal lands. So if you're going to deal with tribal lands, you should look at the governing body that oversees the tribal lands. And usually we'd like to see it by resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Equitable, the evolution should be based on need, as the law says equitable. So we want to make sure that if it's going to be equitable, as you heard earlier, that each tribe is at a different level. And really you want to base it on, just where the tribe is at and what their needs are.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one is definition of duplication of federal funding should be very narrow. I'm not sure what that means, but I think if there's duplication of funds, you want to interpret it very narrow. And then number 4 is the 2.5 gigahertz licensing should not be used as a prior condition or be given some sort of priority weight in applications. So this gigahertz licensing, as I understand it, we don't own it. We applied for this license a while back and we got denied because those folks out of Arizona own our airspace. And they won't give it up. And they've had it for years, I guess. And we've been denied a few times now by the FCC folks to take back our airspace. And it doesn't sound like there's any way around it. So I'm not sure what the solution is on the licensing, but for Lummi, for example, it affects us. And this licensing also affects those tribes in our area, in the Portland area,
Mm-hmm.
Olympia, Seattle, Yakima, and Spokane.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to make sure that you guys get your minds around the licensing part of it, what we need, so that those tribes can keep moving forward. On the other one, on the Prehistoric Act, on the environmental, I think one of the things you also want to add to your list is these right-of-ways. So these right-of-ways are a problem, and a lot of them are expired. A lot of them, either you know about your right-of-way or you don't. In our area, on Lummi, for example, these right-of-ways expired 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they're still being used by the companies. And then the underserved areas, like I said, we want to make sure that that the folks that you guys are working with there, Adam, understand that Indian country is very unique, and it's got to be understood. I think you're going to need more help than just one guy, And we have a lot of subject matter experts around Indian country. And you really should be tapping into some of these folks that can help you. Because again, I wouldn't put it all on one man's shoulders to help figure this out. And you may think of an advisory committee or something that can help this organization do a good job. So this funding is another question I have. It's not on the list. But if we make a mistake in our application, can we correct it? Is there going to be room to go back and redo our application if we make a mistake or we need some additional support? The other concern I have is the supply chain, and we expect this thing to get built out in a year, as I understand it. But what if we don't have the supplies? And what are we expected to do? What does the money go away, or do we wait for the supplies? They may take a year or two to get the equipment or the fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you guys looked at the supply chain, but we ordered some things for our people, and it took 4 or 5 months sometimes to get things ordered. So that's just some of our concerns. The other one, the last one, I think, is the service providers that are on here now. Once we flip the switch, begin to flip the switch for this to happen, you know, we want to make sure that these providers that are on the reservation don't punish us. So they don't come back and turn us off maybe 2 months before we're getting ready to flip our switch. Because some of these providers aren't very friendly to Indian people.
Thank you. Councilman Kagi, I do have a question for you on the
comments.
Oh,
are you there?
I am. I think I thought you were done. I'm sorry. It may have cut out a bit.
So
go ahead.
I would recommend that if you want our consultation, that we have a lot of questions. And I hope you're going to be able to answer some of them as you go forward, because again, is there going to be room to answer the questions that we have and respond to what the consultation needs to be? Is that, you know, we have questions, we want you to answer them so that we can hear whether it's going to be doable or not. I hope that's in the last part of your consultation where the answers come on our questions.
I think no, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. I think a large portion of the way that the statute reads, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of some of these spaces. So one of the things that I would ask of all of you providing comment or that you may have questions is as you submit your questions to us, if you could also submit what you feel the solution is to that question. Because it's a fairly blank slate with some of these, with a lot of the elements within the statute, which is unusual coming to Indian country. We're not used to, again, having an opportunity to select ingredients for the cake before it's baked. And in this instance, we do have that opportunity. So I don't have a direct answer for you on your question about questions. Beyond that, I think we need to receive this feedback from today and do a little bit of a regroup with our team, and then discuss how we want to take those responses beyond what we've heard in today's consultation. In full disclosure, that's where we're at the moment.
Oh, and then one more, Adam. Are you going to hear me?
Yes.
Is there's a bigger problem with the ocean tribes that have cable that goes past their reservation.
Mr. Kagi, I think we lost you. Oh. There we go.
Did you get that?
There we go. If you could repeat the last statement that you made.
Yeah, the ocean tribes have cable that goes past their territory,
mm-hmm.
and they want access to those lines that are sitting outside their boundaries in the water.
Understood. I believe that there is an element in the statute that does address oceanic cable agnostic barrier as well. So thank you for that feedback. Thank you. And anything additional, Councilman Kagi?
That's it for now. I thank you guys very much, and we'll look forward to getting something together for you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you for your insightful feedback and sharing your perspective on behalf of Lummi Nation. Thank you. Laura.
Oh, yeah. So we do have a couple of folks with hands up, and I just want to remind folks that if you're a tribal leader and you have comments to share as a part of this consultation, that you use the raise hand function in the GoToWebinar tool in the app. And then we will try again to unmute all of the lines so that people who are on audio only can participate as well. I have two more lined up with hands up. Theron Rutnya and Madonna Yawaki. So I'll take those in the order that I mentioned, and then look for other hands, or after this, be sure that we open the line. So.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Rutna, how are you?
We can't hear. I've unmuted your line. Are you able to?
I think I have it now.
There we go. How are you doing?
Yes, very good, Adam. This is Theron Rutna from the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians. I also serve on the FirstNet Tribal Working Group in the FCC Native Nations Task Force, as well as working with Governor Tony Evers' Broadband Task Force for the state of Wisconsin. I really would like to echo the words of the other Native leaders I've been listening to for the past couple of hours. They've got some great ideas, and we're really seeing what this funding can and can't do. From my position in northern Wisconsin, I'd like to bring up the idea of whether this funding could be used to subsidize cellular equipment for various carriers in order to bring cellular broadband to membership in areas where towers are the only way we're going to ever be able to feed these members reasonable bandwidth. To give you an example, outside of the AT&T and FirstNet contract, no other providers are willing to come up to this part of northern Wisconsin because it doesn't make a business case for them to be able to put the equipment on the tower. They'd be perfectly happy to operate that equipment, but without the funding to make that equipment exist in the first place, then there's no way to get cellular providers onto our new towers, sometimes even onto existing towers. The tribe's going to be building another tower to cover the shaded areas of our reservation, as well as the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, where the original AT&T FirstNet tower does not cover. While I'm relatively confident in the abilities of AT&T and FirstNet, many of the membership have been asking, why can't other carriers come up? And those carriers have simply said, no business case. So in a year build out, there's not much that, as a small reservation with little human resources, we're not going to be able to build anything out. But that we could definitely make happen. So that's my commentary, and I appreciate the opportunity for consultation.
Mr. Rutna, it sounds as though you listed two items that you see as priority areas for you, or buckets. And as we're talking through this, we are thinking about what are the different buckets or categories that folks may be thinking about. So what I heard from you is you have one bucket need that may be the actual acquisition of a piece of equipment, but then you may also have an infrastructure or fiber pole or a more infrastructure-centric component of your needs as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. Those infrastructure needs are there. I just can't visualize being able to do them in the timeframes that have been listed. The first I can with the purchase of equipment, but the infrastructure needs, especially with the supply chain of contractors, and just the sheer amount of time it takes to contract and go through the permitting processes. It took me 2.5 years to get a single 3-mile line to Bayfield, which is our nearest large city. I can't imagine being able to do a tribal infrastructure project in sub 1 year.
Thank you. You bring up a very relevant point that we've heard, and thank you for providing that on the record today about your concerns of the 1-year timeline associated currently with statute. Thank you for providing that feedback here, sir.
You're welcome, Adam. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Laura. Who do we have next?
Okay. So we have a hand up that I didn't get to write the name down, and I'll confess it's not there anymore. So I don't know who that was. Jerry Noonan, Mr. Noonan, I'm going to unmute your line. Mr. Noonan, your line should be live. If you're
Okay. There we go. I couldn't use my computer today.
All right, no, I think I'm unmuted now, correct?
You're in now, Mr. Noonan. Thank you.
All right, good. Let me, I represent the Santee Sioux Nation out in Nebraska, and I'm actually a contracted CFO and a CPA, and I have kind of a unique perspective. I was in the telecommunication business back in 1996 when they deregulated the telecommunications industry. And at that time, and I think this may be a solution for the tribes, they had what they called a ILEC and a CLEC. The ILEC were the local exchange carriers that were in existence at the time. And then they also created a classification called a CLEC. A CLEC was a competitive local exchange carrier. And one of the unique things that they were able to do, and we were able to do, is they had an element called an unbundled network element, which allowed you to go in and negotiate separately with the ILEC for certain infrastructure, services, and anything that they had available, but you were able to negotiate that. You also were able to get at some of the subsidized programs, such as the Universal Service Fund. So when I hear the word checkerboard, I think of instantly every tribe should form some type of a communication enterprise under the 1934 Reorganization Act. If they're a corporation, create themselves a communications company or a telco, and then apply either to the state or to the FCC to become a CLEC. And then they can go in and negotiate some of these elements with the local exchange carrier to get the services that they're looking for. And I offer that only as a comment because we just bought a small internet service carrier in the city itself, and we had about 100 customers, and we're presently going to file for a CLEC status with the state of Nebraska so that we can start doing some of this infrastructure or start negotiating with some of these ILECs for the unbundled network elements, such as fiber. So I just offer that as a comment.
Thank you.
About this stuff.
Thank you.
We give it to our white guys and.
We have any additional comments, Mr. Noonan?
That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you for the feedback and the suggestions around some creative solutions.
Well, my only question was, is FCC, if you did get a CLEC, are they going to be in line to basically put out a CLEC approval without going to a state?
I don't know the answer to that, but we will capture that. Thank
Good.
you. Thank you. Okay.
His phones.
So I'm continuing to check the question or the chat bot, although to address any comments or difficulties folks are having. I don't have anyone with a hand up in GoToWebinar at this point. I'm going to ask Gilbert, can you unmute the line? And I know it might get a little loud, but want to be sure that we have offered everyone who is participating the opportunity to provide their comments. So Gilbert, can you let us know when you have the lines unmuted?
Yeah, I've just unmuted the lines, and folks who are on audio only will have to press *6 to unmute themselves. So I just sort of unlock that permission if you have a comment for us.
Thank you, Gilbert. Just to repeat that, if you're on the audio line only and have comments to share, please press *6 and that should unmute your line.
Okay. So again, *6 will unmute the line. Well, it's hard for us to be able to see at the moment who's actually on the phone bridge when you come off of mute. So we may have to work this a little bit differently. Is there an individual that would like to come off mute and try first or provide your comment?
Adam, we also, I think, have to acknowledge that, folks would only have gotten this information that we provided earlier today and may be looking for a chance to download it, think about it, talk to their colleagues to come in. I do think that Mr. Kagi has another question, so I'm going to specifically unmute his line so he can share his comments.
Thank you, Laura.
Mr. Kagi?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So Adam, I got a, not for you, but maybe for your higher ups there that we talked to, and whether or not, because this is kind of the beginning of what we need to do for Indian country.
Mm-hmm.
And the number we heard the other day was more like a number like 7.2 billion. And is the organization going to be with us in the long run, or is this a one-shot deal for us?
The question about the larger NTIA as a whole and their position on Indian country is what it sounds like you're asking about.
Yeah, so is this going to be a long-term relationship we're building with you folks? Or is it just $1 billion and then you're gone?
That's a great question. I actually, Doug, if you are on the line and you're prepared to give comment, or if you're willing to give comment on that at this time, please feel free to jump in. And if not, this is absolutely a question we can take back, Mr. Kagi, but Doug is actually the right person to probably address the larger NTIA organizational question that you've asked. I will remind everybody that. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure if Doug is muted or not. I will add that, as a matter of beyond this, I think organizationally you have a commitment from a number of us who work for this organization and have for a while. In terms of another, I think you said 7.2, which means we're short $6.2 billion. That would be a congressional action and not something we could do without it. But certainly, I think you have some commitment on our part to be a part of the solution with the resources that we do have.
Because again, Laura, this money will only take us so far, and we got to understand, and the organization has to stand with us when we're with Congress on the plan that we have to fully connect all our Indian people. Mm-hmm. So that we want to make sure you guys are going to be a good partner for us in a way that you stand with us, and we're talking to Congress and we need another $1 billion or $2 billion to move forward. That's the future, and we want the best for our kids. So we want to make sure that we're well prepared going into the future.
All right, give me just a second. I am going to try to make sure that I unmute Douglas Kinkoff, who is our associate administrator. Unfortunately, I'm looking. I can't. His phone line appears to be grayed out. I'm sorry. I don't know how. I can't figure out how to unmute you. Give me a few minutes and see if we can do something. Gilbert, can you try to unmute all of the lines and see if that won't? And then Doug, you'd have to press *6 if you're on audio.
Yes, I unmuted all the lines. Can you hear me? And set Doug on.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me now. Yeah, somehow I got picked up in the muting and unmuting of the lines there. No, I think, Laura, you're right. We would love this to be a long-term proposition with the tribes. We are all in on the need for the support for broadband in the tribal territories. The funding comes from Congress, and ultimately, right, they've given us $1 billion, and then we will administer that along with the minority program and the others And then we hope this to be a longer term, but that is really indicative of whether or not Congress gives us additional funding for tribal areas. Adam, back to you.
Thanks, Doug. I would just like to add to Doug's comments that while, again, the dollars are tied to the congressional appropriations process, one of the things that we highlighted as we are going through the topic areas was really wanting to understand a way. I've heard the $7 billion number thrown around, but I've also been told that number doesn't include the needs that are in Alaska or maybe also out in the Hawaiian Islands, and so for the Hawaiian homelands. And so what I can commit to this is that we are looking at finding a way to come up with the total need in this process to help to try to quantify and put a real number to the need directly from the application or reporting process, in order to have that data point to provide to the tribes and the organizations to use. I have to be careful here, to be able to use it how you see fit in your advocacy with Congress. So, and I apologize, Councilman Kagi, for the Fed speak, but that's probably as far as we could probably take the response. And I know it's definitely not exactly what you were looking for, so I do apologize for that. But I do thank you for raising your concern. And again, what we are doing here today is establishing a record of those needs, of those wants, of those asks, both of this program, and it's absolutely fair game to raise where you see what it is that you would like to see from NTIA to sustain the tribal broadband needs in Indian country. So thank you for those, for your words and for your feedback. Laura.
All right, I'm gonna let folks know that I've gotten a request for a link for the other two events that are next Wednesday the 10th and next Friday the 12th, the same time frame of on the East Coast, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And sorry, I can't quickly do the calculation of what that means if you're Central, Mountain, or Pacific. But it is available on our website, and I'm going to work to get that link up in via the chat or the questions. And I do see we have one more hand up. Will Micklin, I believe is the name, and I'm going to try to, oh, it's gone now.
I'm here.
Oh,
all right.
Vice President Micklin. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just taking advantage of the time. Just a couple of more notes here, Adam.
Please.
A recommendation that the eligible entities defined in section A8D that the tribal organization defined in section A8D be interpreted to include all eligible entities listed under section A8. In Southeast Alaska, as you may know, Tlingit is a regional tribe. There's 18 IRA tribes, and there's a Silaska Corporation is the regional corporation. The potential is for one or more to join in an application, and I don't see that specifically provided for in the act. But if that were interpreted to be a tribal organization, then that would satisfy that requirement. And I think that would be very beneficial. Second, that rights of way or easements required for an application not be required to be in the possession or executed prior to award of a grant, and that could be forward-looking. It's a very short time period. As far as I can calculate, it seems like May 26th is a key date for getting this program activated, and that's such a short date that some components of an application may be forward-looking, and certainly easements would be included, or rights of way could be included among them. The technical burden for an application under such a short time frame will hopefully not be extensive. That's been the obstacle for many tribes for these technical subject matter like broadband or energy, and retaining technical advice or having the funds for technical advice with limitations on support from the Assistant Secretary in the Act, and also the time frame somewhat kind of precluding as a practical matter that these applications be actually not be evaluated on a purely technical basis. I know that's going to be challenging particularly for the equitable distribution requirement, but I think it's just a practical reality that is going to need to be dealt with. And finally, for the tribal lands component, for the broadband service and the connectivity program to be on tribal lands, it seems as if on the that requirement under C1A, broadband service on tribal land, is different than B, remote learning, telework, telehealth resources during the COVID-19 pandemic. B doesn't cite tribal land, so it seems that that likely is intentional, given that extension of telehealth, telemedicine typically is from IHS or other healthcare anchor institutions that may be that are centralized and not on a particular tribe's land, would need to be served or connected through across non-tribal lands. The broadband service on tribal lands, I think we need to be careful here in the interpretation that many tribes have checkerboard reservations, or tribes that have connectivity to backbone through the middle mile may need a portion of that to be, or likely to be, off of the tribal land.
Right.
So hopefully the interpretation will not be that the every segment of the project defined in the application need be on tribal land. Certainly, if we're going to access a backbone to bring broadband services onto a reservation, that would presume that unless the tribe has backbone traversing its reservation, which would be rare, that there need be some segment of the project off of tribal land. I'm not sure you're going to be able to find many projects that don't have that component. So I think that's a necessary consideration. So thanks for the additional time. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely, Vice President Micklin. Thank you for the feedback and sharing what you wanted to make sure we're considering in this process as we again get these items on the record and understand what some of the things are that you would like to see to make this program successful for solving the digital divide challenges that you're having. And you bring up a very fair point. There are some that have a location next to backhaul or backbone. There are others that are going to require, and a number of you have shared it on the call today, that have required you to go off in order to solve the the challenges that you're facing with this, there's some element that you're seeking or that you see as part of an infrastructure project that would require you to go off reservation. So those absolutely heard loud and clear. I know that some members of the team at NTIA, including Jennifer Duane and Doug himself, as well as Laura and Jean Rice, are all tracking these items. So thank you for your feedback and providing that clarification for us. Laura.
I do not have, let's make sure, I don't have hands up at this time. I will make the offer again that we can open the lines, open all of the lines, and then if you are on audio only, you would need to press *6 to activate your specific line. So Gilbert, could you open the lines?
Yes, the lines are open, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, *6 is the code to come off of mute. For those of you that, oh, there's a voice. Who do we have? Name, please, title, and tribe you're representing.
Good afternoon. My name is Daryl Hernandez, Oglala Sioux Tribe Legislative Liaison. Obviously, this is probably the first time we had a conversation about the broadband. Is that right? This is just a consultation between tribes. Is that it?
Yes, this is a government consultation relating to the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, which is housed in the HR 133 that was passed here just before Christmas. Yes.
Outstanding. Obviously, I think there was I think my colleague still online might be listening. I know Erna Weston is actually spearheading this type of mission, but with me and the OST Legislative Liaison and President's Office, I just wanted to be able to extend our excitement to be able to get this broadband up and going and see if we're on the right track and if there's any resources that we need. And I know it's just it's one milestone after another. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and we just need to get our ducks in a row and get things going. But I think our last councilman that jumped on, hearing his concerns, I think he is from Washington, and I had to probably just piggyback off him and what we have our crisis here as in the area we cover, 3.2 million acres. 9 districts and over 46,000 tribal members. But in that aspect, we have a lot of tribal members that don't have that type of access for internet and the capabilities, and it's much too expensive in a way. So obviously mine would be affordable, making sure it actually can be doing its job in a way, having that positive continuity going from district to district, and making sure that the line of sight and communication is going to be well fed and well set in stone in a lot of ways. So, but I just wanted to extend a heartfelt handshake to all of you that is listening in today, and hopefully we can get this ball rolling and proceed on. But I do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for your feedback and your participation in today's session. I think we all echo the excitement, both the tribes that you've heard today, and frankly, those of us that have been working on the federal side as well. This is an exciting opportunity to really address a major need that COVID has shined a light on. It's been there a long time, but COVID seemed to do that. And I think we all see this as an exciting step towards really solving a big problem. There's a lot of motivation behind everybody, and your good wishes and friendly handshakes are much appreciated across the board. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course, thank you very much.
Thank you. So *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Is there anybody else that we have on the line? Okay. We'll just give it another 10 or 15 seconds while I'm sure folks are having to unlock their phones and come off of mute or punch in the *6. We'll just give it another second here.
So Adam, I'll use this time while folks are punching buttons to let folks know that we did post in the chat box the link to our website that takes you to the registration for the sessions next Wednesday and Friday at the same time.
Yes. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so just to reiterate, the chat box, it'll get you over to the NTIA website where all the information is regarding this specific program, the Dear Tribal Leader letter, as well as the consultation schedule is there. So we'll give it maybe just 10 or 15 more seconds, and if not, we'll move forward into closing this out. So we'll just hold for 10 or 15 more seconds for any of our folks that are on the phone. Again, *6. Okay. Well, hearing none, if we could go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Regarding the next steps. So we also, we'll say it and then we'll put it up on the screen, right? If there's additional information, it can be found, as I just mentioned, on the broadband usa.ntia.doc.gov website. Again, we encourage you, this is not a one and done. If you would like to continue to engage or there's more thoughts that you have as you go through the weekend and the beginning of next week, or you just weren't prepared to share your comments today, you just wanted to listen and you want to be a part of the discussion and provide that feedback next week, we want to encourage you to join us again, same time that we would be starting, and we're looking again at February 10th, which is next Wednesday, and February 12th. Again, there's also the option to submit your responses in writing to broadbandusa@ntia.gov. We will be, obviously the whole purpose of this process is to make sure that we are getting the right information, obviously the establishment of a record to develop that, and so that we can have a thoughtful, equitable process to access these dollars through the NOFO. And again, you can sign up for the mailing list as well. That's available through the site. And then also just a quick plug for things outside of the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. On March 17th, NTIA will also be hosting a larger grant program session if you want to look at some of the additional pots of funds that are out and available. So with that, we'll move forward and starting to wrap. I want to thank everybody for your time and participation. I know this is probably not the best platform to conduct a consultation, and to be candid, had we had different timelines outlined in the statute, I think we could have probably done this a little bit differently. But I do want to say thank you for your flexibility. We have constructed all of this in frankly record time. I've never seen anything like this before, where we have moved so quickly to not only establish the content on which to consult, but pull off the consultations in a sub 60-day timeline. And so I do want to thank you for your patience and your flexibility in this process, and frankly for your candor in expressing your concerns for those of you that did today to make this a good program, and know that, again, from the folks on the government side of the discussion, know that this is, everybody is very motivated to try to solve the problem the best we can with the resources that we have and do it in a good way. And I want to thank all of you for, again, your flexibility and your time. So with that, we will go ahead and conclude today's session. We again encourage you to submit your responses in writing, and if you could continue to be safe, be well, and Ashun Lobit, and thank you for joining us today. that will conclude the consultation.
Yeah, Adam, this is Joe Garcia. Can you hear me?
I can, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to appraise the audience about a document that was provided through the, it was a report to the Federal Communications Commission, and it came from the tribal members of the task force, tribal leaders communication task force, Native Nations Communication Task Force. It's titled Recommendations for Improving Required Tribal Engagement Between Covered Providers and Tribal Governments. So a lot of the things that were discussed as solutions or as problematic areas that were talked about today are basically covered in this document. It's available at FCC. So if people would like to learn a little bit more about what's available, y'all might benefit from that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. We appreciate that, and we will definitely take a look at the. We actually have been looking at that document. We will continue to make sure that we again as part of the establishment of the record today, that we continue to look into those recommendations brought forth by the Native Nations Task Force. Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, please have a safe, fun-filled weekend. And again, Nishun Lobit from me, my heart is good, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.